and that was Spencer Rattler. You can always say, oh, there's no competition, but when you have a guy like Spencer Rattler coming in with prior experience, at a place like Oklahoma, playing at the level that he did there, remember, he at one point in time was like the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman going into what was then, I guess, his redshirt sophomore year, being thought of highly on draft boards and all that kind of stuff. So when he comes here, he was handed the keys, and there was no dispute about that, really. And now it's a different story. Now you have LaNorris Sellers, redshirt freshman, and then Robbie Ashford, who does have some starting experience in the SEC, but didn't exactly set the world on fire in that previous, experience. Davis Bevel also has prior playing experience from his time, at Pitt. So a lot of questions still to be answered about this quarterback spot and who is going to come out and win the position. Now, we assume it's LaNorris Sellers just because he kind of has the inside track and having been here for a year already. But, it's a different story when you are truly handed the reins of the offense and expected to be the guy. And not everybody can step up and be that guy. Now, from everything that we've heard so far through spring, seems like LaNorris Sellers is doing a pretty good job. But, the second time around is going to be different because the primary focus is going to be on him. He actually talked to the media yesterday, as long as several players did. We'll start off with cut number 3 here, Dave. This is LaNorris Sellers talking about the difference in his relationship with Dow Loggins in this second spring.
Yeah, he's more intense this year, I'll say. Like, last year he was intense too, but this year just, like, he has an edge about him, I'll say. Like, I love D-Lo, I love his coaching like I've always have. Stand-up, funny guy. Like, he'll be honest with you all the time. So I feel like this year he's just more intense, like, more attention to detail this year, like, with everybody in the room rather than just, like, because Spencer knew his stuff last year, so he didn't have to really, like, tell him much. But this year it's more like, you got to just tell everybody and coach everybody, like, differently based on their strengths.
And that makes a lot of sense. D-Lo, we've talked to him here on 107.5 The Game, and he's an intense guy, loves talking the X's and O's and the ins and outs of everything football related. And I can imagine there is a heightened sense of intensity within him going into the spring because you are kind of starting over. Again, you had a guy in Spencer Rattler that had been there and done that before, and with tons of college experience going into your first season with him a year ago. Now you have a completely clean slate, and you theoretically have a guy that has never started a game before that's getting ready to go into the grinder of the SEC schedule coming up this fall. Again, assuming LaNorris Sellers wins that job, and you're molding this offense around him, much like you did a season ago, saying, all right, here is our best player, here is our quarterback, let's make the offense fit his skill set. And they did a good job of that. Again, some of the execution around Spencer Rattler wasn't what it needed to be for the offense as a whole to be more successful, but I don't think anybody doubts that what the offense that they formed was built around Spencer Rattler and what he did well. And now you have a different canvas to paint on with LaNorris Sellers as well as Robbie Ashford because they play a different type of running quarterback given the fact that the running element is so heavily involved in their game. Or you're going to be running RPOs. You're going to be able to, have these designed runs in there that Spencer Rattler certainly could run, but it was a last-ditch effort kind of thing. And unfortunately, last year, with the way the offensive line played, he had to resort to that last-ditch effort quite a bit. But he sat back in the pocket, he let things progress down the field, and then cut and ran if nothing was developing or if there was just too much pressure in his face and, trying to escape danger. Again, you're going to be running a lot of zone reads and things like that with LaNorris Sellers, where the objective of the play is for him to run the ball off the right side, the left side, whatever it may be, or read the defense and decide whether he is handing it off or keeping it, depending on, how the linebackers crash down or whatever. So it's a completely different offense, and I can imagine that is exciting for a guy like, Dow Loggins, who gets to again, kind of rewrite the book of what the offense is going to be based around the skill set of whatever quarterback it ends up being. And it does benefit them that they are very similar in skill set compared to, maybe the difference between what you had last year with Spencer Rattler and LaNorris Sellers. But, regardless, the offense will be similar whether each one, or no matter which one of those guys ends up winning the job at the end of the day. For LaNorris Sellers, he talked about his goals as well. What are his goals for this spring and for the spring game coming up this weekend? Cut number 4 here, Dave.
Pretty much taking care of the ball is the biggest thing. Getting the ball up and down the field and scoring, honestly, like, you're judged on how fast, or like, not how fast, but like how many times you get the ball into the end zone. So, I mean, as long as we score, move the ball, and protect it, I think it'll be a pretty good spring game, no matter how you go about it.
And obviously he wants to end the spring on a high note. Again, this is your first chance to play in front of a crowd of people, tens of thousands of people that are now looking at you as the future. Now, LaNorris Sellers actually played pretty well in last year's spring game. If I remember correctly, it was his team that drove down at the end and scored. It was either the winning touchdown or the winning two-point conversion. I don't remember the exact details of it, but, you know, he showed out, and you saw that skill set of what he was able to bring to the table. But, of course, last year we knew he was going to be the backup. We knew he was going to be behind Spencer Rattler, and we were looking at him as somebody to have an effect a little bit later down the line. The microscope is going to be lasered in on him this weekend, and every little thing that he does. And again, the spring as a whole is what you're really trying to pull from, but we're only going to get to see the spring game. So if he goes out there and throws 3 touchdown passes and runs for another score, then, man, everybody's feeling great. Like, we got the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback going into this fall. If he goes out there and throws 2 interceptions and completes less than 50% of his passes, then the whole conversation from the majority of the fans, like, oh, man, I don't know if Sellers is the guy. Hope Robbie Ashford can be better. You know what I mean? And that's not necessarily justified, but that's what's going to happen because, again, we've only got this small sample size to pull from, so we're going to, you know, take from it whatever it gives us and run with that until we see something different, because that's just how people are. Whether right or wrong, that's just what you got to deal with. And LaNorris is aware of that. And, look, these guys can say they plug their ears and try and ignore the noise of social media and all that kind of stuff. It's possible to ignore these days. It's around you. It's all everywhere. And you don't even have to jump on Twitter yourself. Somebody can send you things. People can tell you things about what they saw, what they heard. So obviously you want to go out there, put your best foot forward on social media or on the spring game, and hopefully not have any of those, you know, negative conversations be about you coming away from it as you go through summer and as you go through, you know, fall camp as well. And, you know, the fan base just wants hope. At the end of the day, Terry and I talked about this yesterday. The spring game is about instilling hope in your fan base in a lot of ways to give them something to be excited about for the fall. And when you're coming off of a 5-7 season where you missed a bowl game, getting your fan base excited is very important. You want to give them that optimism to where they're not doom and gloom going through the summer. Now, there's a fine line when it comes to the spring game, because if your offense goes out there and scores 60 points, everybody's going to say, well, what's wrong with the defense? And if the defense shuts down the offense for 0 points, everybody's going to say, well, what's wrong with the offense? So you want to find that, like, nice, happy medium, which everybody has a different definition of what that happy medium is, but you hope to see a good balance of success on both sides of the ball. You hope that the guys that you know are going to be key contributors can play well. And, you know, I feel like in every spring game, you're looking for that one guy that nobody's talking about to pop, whether that be a true freshman, whether that be somebody at the transfer portal, somebody that we weren't otherwise thinking of as maybe being a starter or maybe being a feature player on this team coming up this fall, to say, wow, did you see that guy? Keep an eye on him. Oh, I'm excited to see what he's going to do in the fall. It inevitably happens every spring game. Now, does that mean that person's going to go out there and be a superstar in the fall? It doesn't. There are guys that are practice heroes. There are guys that are, you know, Hall of Famers from Monday to Friday, but when it comes to Saturday and it comes to actually playing in the game, it's just not their bag. It's just not what they excel at. And that's, you know, that's just a fact of sports in general. I mean, if you played sports growing up, there were kids that could knock the cover off the ball in the batting cage, but when you get them out there in a game situation, they can't hit to save their life. And same thing with football. So, you know, I implore everybody to take what you see on Saturday with a grain of salt. We know it's going to be vanilla. We know it's not going to be the full fleshed out version of the South Carolina team. And that, if you see something you don't like, that can give you a reason for optimism. Like, well, we know they're not showing us everything. So hopefully they have something in their back pocket, in their bag, that's going to improve whatever you don't like that you see out there on Saturday. So again, just excited to see these guys out there in general, excited to see the team up close and personal, and hopefully we can get that hope instilled in us going through the summer and into the fall for what's going to be a very, very tough season and a very, very tough schedule for the Gamecocks in 2024. As always, appreciate you guys watching us on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. You can also check us out on the 107.5 The Game app. Just head on over to the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, give it a download, and take us with you wherever you go. Yesterday, as expected, a rule change has come to transferring in college sports. And it's going to have a ripple effect going forward. We'll dive into that coming up. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Thursday morning on the Game. Welcome back into the Extra Point. Tyler Head with you here on the game on your Thursday morning. Reminder, coming up this weekend, you got Gamecock baseball taking on the Arkansas Razorbacks out at Founders Park. Another opportunity for you to win the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. The pot over $900 as we head into this weekend. Hopefully, we finally see a Grand Slam. It's going to be tough. Arkansas's got a very good pitching staff. We'll actually be talking a little bit of Arkansas baseball coming up later on in the hour. Got a guest to give us a little bit of insight into the Arkansas program coming up to wrap up today's edition of the Extra Point. But again, you can go online to 1075thegame.com, register for your chance to win the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. I mentioned this before the break. Yesterday, to the surprise of no one, the NCAA Division I Council has officially voted to change the transfer portal rules once again. The prior rule, as we knew it for a long time, was that you were free one transfer wherever you wanted to go without having to worry about sitting out. But if you transferred for a second time as an undergraduate, so you would not received a degree from your university, then you were going to, if you transferred again, you were going to have to sit out a year. As we saw with the Tez Walker situation at the University of North Carolina, you can apply for a waiver, but that was not always granted by the NCAA. And, well, as things typically happen with the NCAA, they eventually got taken to court. And it was deemed by those courts, specifically one in West Virginia, that they were violating antitrust laws, as they seem to do with every court case, and that for a period of time temporarily stopped the transfer rule of having to sit out. So we've kind of been operating in this space of not having that rule in place, but it's officially gone into effect now, which truly means we've entered the free agent era of college football, or college sports in general, but specifically college football, where there is no longer a restriction or deterrent from freely transferring year in and year out. And what we've seen in the era, in the transfer portal era in general, is already this mass amount of turnover just in general when it comes to college sports, specifically college football, on a year in, year out basis. I mean, look at how many guys that South Carolina lost at the end of last season. Now, South Carolina went out there in the transfer portal and was able to supplement what they lost by bringing in some really good talent that we're all excited about what these guys are going to be able to do. But, man, it just seemed like for the portion of about a week and a half there, it was just one after another of, you know, key names on South Carolina's team that were leaving. Juice Wells, Pup Howard, Stone Blanton, Mario Anderson. It just one after another. Now, all those guys had the ability. Now, Juice Wells being somebody that had already graduated, as well as Mario Anderson, all those guys had the ability initially anyway to go ahead and transfer somewhere and not have to worry about sitting out because they had, you know, fulfilled their academic requirements. Well, that wouldn't be a case, but, you know, now, for a guy like Pup Howard, who again transferred to Florida, if he suddenly decided this week, because the transfer portal is open once again, if he suddenly decided, you know, this week that, hey, I'm going to transfer somewhere else, then he wouldn't have to sit out. If he played a year at Florida and decided he wanted to transfer somewhere else again, he wouldn't have to sit out then, and so on and so forth. Like, it's truly just become, all right, everybody's going to assess things 1 year at a time, which you're kind of doing anyway, but truly now it's across the board because there's no longer that deterrent for these guys that have already transferred to, okay, well, now I got to stay here for 2 years or whatever it may be, or at least until I get my degree if I want to transfer somewhere else. It's truly going to be mass chaos if it's not already chaos. And, you know, I talk all the time about unintended consequences when it comes to any rule change, specifically in college sports, that there's something that we don't foresee right now or can't predict that's going to end up becoming a big deal, that we're going to look back on and say, oh, wow, didn't see that coming. I didn't really think of that, because it happens every single time, or seemingly every single time. And I can't sit here and tell you what that's going to be with this, but it's going to have a profound effect on college football and college sports in general. Now that, again, everybody just kind of has free reign to transfer wherever they want, whenever they want, without penalty. Because, again, when you go back to the original transfer portal, or not before the transfer portal was a thing, that if you wanted to transfer back in 2008 and you had not graduated yet, well, you're going to have to sit out a year. And you knew that going in. And you better be darn sure that place you were going to was going to truly give you the best option to further your career, because you have to wait a full 2 years to ever see the field at that place if you weren't a graduate yet. And the transfer portal, and I can see to a degree, giving guys the opportunity to have a one-time transfer and say, okay, you went to a school, maybe the coaching staff changed, maybe you didn't like, how you were utilized in that first season. We're going to give you the opportunity to transfer and better yourself without any repercussions. But now it's open season, and now you're going to have guys truly. It's going to become a normal thing to see guys spend 4 years at 4 different schools, or 5 years if they utilize the redshirt year, or whatever it may be. And this could go in the category of unintended consequences. This article by Heather Dinich on ESPN detailing this yesterday has a quote from Oregon head coach Dan Lanning, and he brings up a really good point that never comes to mind when we're thinking about things like this, but is important to the life and careers of the athletes that are taking on these transfers. He says, one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, at what point does the degree still matter? I think it's going to make it harder and harder if guys become multi-year transfer guys for them to actually have a college degree. If you graduate, there's a lot of times it makes sense. Change schools as many times as you want if you graduate. But on the same note, if somebody's changed schools 3 times, I'm wondering what their progress towards a degree really looks like. I think that's something everyone should probably have some awareness of. Again, we look at everything through the lens of purely the sport itself, but these are college students still, and most of them are not going to go professional in football or basketball or whatever sport they're playing in, though a lot of them, if not all of them, come into college with that mindset of they're going to be in that 2%, 1%, whatever it is, to go pro, and that the degree may not matter to them necessarily. Even the ones that do go pro, the average lifespan of someone in the NFL is like, 3-4 years at best? So having that degree to fall back on is important. And for anybody that has transferred schools in college, you know how hard it is to get credits to transfer over. And you inevitably run into, okay, well, we don't actually count this class that you took, or these 3 classes you took at your previous school don't really count toward the curriculum here, so you're going to have to make up this class. You're going to have to redo this class and this Spanish or whatever it may be, and it creates a longer time that you're supposed to be in college. So if you're doing that 3 times and going to 4 different schools over 4 years, Dan Lanning brings up a really good point. I don't know how you attain a degree doing that either. And again, that's kind of one of those things that most of those guys probably aren't going to be thinking about, because they're not going to be thinking about obtaining the best amount of playing time and furthering their own career more than anything else. But it's important to note. It's important to keep in your mind, because that is something that does matter at the end of the day, because you're going to have a lot of student athletes that leave college that aren't as educated as they could be. They don't have a degree. So when they don't go pro in football, it's like, okay, well, now you don't even have a complete degree to fall back on. You know what I mean? Again, just one unintended consequences. But as far as roster management, as far as the calendar of college football, it's going to have a ripple effect across the entire sport. And we're not going to understand the full scope of it right now, because literally we are so early on in this process. But I do wonder and we'll even keep this local to South Carolina, if there was somebody on the roster that's already transferred in that maybe went through spring practice and said, you know what, I don't think I'm being utilized as much as I thought I was going to. Why don't I go ahead and explore another transfer? You know what I mean? Which, again, the rule was already temporarily blocked anyway, but now that it's full-fledged and wide open going forward, maybe that changes somebody's mind. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's something worth considering. Certainly so. We'll jump into some baseball conversation coming up next. Again, big week series this weekend, taking on Arkansas. Coach Kingston on Carolina Calls last night, talking about a couple key players that are going to prove to be beneficial this weekend, taking on the Arkansas Razorbacks. We'll hear from him coming up. It is the Extra Point. So I head along with you on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. It's the Extra Points Hour ahead with you here on this Thursday morning. Time to talk some baseball. By the way, coming up at the end of the hour, we're going to be talking to Mason Choate, who covers the Arkansas Razorbacks baseball team for hogbeat.com, which is Arkansas's rival site. And we'll get his insight on to what to expect from this team coming up this weekend as they come into Founders Park. Very good Arkansas team, obviously number 2 in the nation, as we talked about. Only a couple of losses in SEC play, 12-3 so far this season. Picked up a very big win last night, taking on Texas Tech in their midweek contest as well. But Coach Kingston last night on Carolina Calls did talk about Arkansas, but also talked about some very specific players on this South Carolina team in reference to what they've done here as of late. And obviously the story of this week has really revolved around Will Tippett and his emergence at the bottom of the lineup in that 9-hole, finally being able to string together some good games between what he did at Florida and what he did against the Citadel the other night. Go with cut number 17 here, Dave. Here is Coach Kingston talking about that progress and working with Will Tippett to get him to this point.
Feels like it's night and day. I think for the coaches, for the players, for the fans, I'm sure watching, it feels like when he walks to the plate now, something good has a chance to happen, and it has. Ever since he went to just right-handed and stopped the switch hitting, he's been able to focus on one side instead of splitting his time and his work and his prep, and he's been a much better player. Right-handed is his natural side, and he's just been much better at the 2 homers, the 2 doubles, a lot of walks. He's been a weapon now all of a sudden. Statistically, base, he can steal bases as well. So him being willing to go ahead and you got to swallow your pride a little bit, because when you try to be a switch hitter and it's not going the way you want, you've got to swallow your pride and just say, okay, I'm going to take a step back, get to my natural side, and do what's best for the team. He's done that, and it's been great for him and for us.
And it absolutely has been. And again, you're talking about a guy that went into the weekend against Florida having not had but one multi-hit game the entire season. And then between Friday and Saturday, 2 hits in each one of those games, has 2 hits the other night against the Citadel, including that home run that ended up being the deciding factor in that game. South Carolina wins the game by 1 run. Will Tippett hits the last home run that puts them ahead 4-3. Or I think it was 42 at that point in time. But regardless, I mean, the production's finally there. And, like Coach Kingston said, you always knew that he had the ability to do that, but it was simplifying things, cutting in half what he was trying to focus on, what he was trying to work with by being a switch hitter. And later on in the show, Coach Kingston talked about the difficulty of being a switch hitter. And if you've never done it before, it's pretty darn hard. And he mentioned, there's only a handful of guys that are revered as these great switch hitters in the history of Major League Baseball because it's such a unique and hard thing to do. And not that Will Tippett is not capable of being a good switch hitter, but when you cut that focus in half and say, okay, well, you're naturally right-handed. Let's just focus on you hitting right from now on and see how that works. You see the night and day difference that you end up with. And is it going to be the sustained success? Is he going to suddenly start hitting, 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5 every single game? Probably not. It's going to have its ebbs and flows, but if you can just get more consistent production out of him, that's going to benefit your entire lineup. Because for most of the season, 9 was just a given, like, all right, that's probably going to be an out. Maybe he'll walk. You know what I mean? But now you have the ability to have someone that can get on base. And he's quick, he's speedy, he's good on the base path. So he can get some extra bases as well. And then you roll that into the top of your lineup, especially now with Cole Messina leading off and his clip of getting on base. Like, this can prove very beneficial for what's going to be a very tough slate of games coming up over the course of the next month as you close out conference play, in the regular season at least. So obviously, big to finally see that production coming from Will Tippett. One other one here, Dave, with the never-ending loop of rotating around when it comes to the starting lineup. One consistency has been obviously Eli Jones in that Friday role. And here is Coach Kingston, cut number 20 here, Dave, talking about Eli Jones and how consistent he's been this season.
Well, Eli has gotten better every single year, and he's been, for us, the guy that gives us the most length from a starting standpoint on the weekend. And because of that, we may even look at, do we use him on a different day? You know, I've talked to Coach Tanner a bunch about, he used to always use the guy that he felt could give him the most length as a starter on Saturdays. And we've been talking about that for a few weeks now. And, you know, they're not saying we're going to do it this weekend. I'm not saying we won't. But when you have the guy that gives you the most innings in a start, if he does it in the middle of the series, it allows your best bullpen guys to go Friday, have a day off, and then go Sunday as well. So it's something we've been looking at, but back to him in terms of his growth, he's our most consistent guy. He came in here a little bit under the radar. He wasn't one of these top 100 prospects coming out of Georgia, but we knew that he could be really good because he had all the makings. He had the maturity, he had the talent, he had the want to, all the things, and he's everything we hoped he would be. He's been that and then some, and he's the leader of our pitching staff. There's no question about it.
And he's been the glue holding together the starting rotation so far this entire season. Again, you've had a mixed bag of guys coming in on Saturday and Sunday to varying degrees of success, but even going into this weekend, we don't exactly know what the rest of the lineup's going to look like, but you know Eli Jones is going to be your Friday starter, and he's done a very good job this season. Sure, he had a rough outing against Texas A&M the other week, but righted the ship this past Friday against Florida, and has been consistent the entire season, which is what you want out of your ace of staff that gets to go on Friday nights. So again, assuming he stays healthy, knock on wood, that's the case. You at least know you have a good guy on Friday night, and hopefully the rest of the pitching staff can continue to fall in line behind that, and we'll see what the rotation ends up looking like for this weekend. Speaking of pitching, it's going to be a great pitching matchup coming up on Friday night because you're going to have Eli Jones taking on Hagen Smith, who is a projected top 10 pick in the upcoming MLB draft and just a phenomenal pitcher for the Arkansas Razorbacks. We'll talk about him as well as what to expect from this Razorbacks team as we talk with Mason Choate from hogbeat.com coming up next to wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point on your Thursday morning here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points Out Ahead here with you on this Thursday morning. A couple more minutes to go. Wrapping up today's edition of the show. Of course, big series coming up this weekend. Gamecocks taking on the Razorbacks out at Founders Park. Join me now on the Love Chevrolet phone lines to give us a little bit of insight into this Arkansas program is Mason Choate from hogbeat.com. Mason, first of all, appreciate you taking your time and talking to us this morning. First off, I got to ask, I watched a little bit of the game last night between Arkansas and Texas Tech. How did this weird scheduling quirk come about where you're playing 2 weeks in a row of back-to-back midweek games, last week against San Jose State and then this week against Texas Tech? Well, what's that all about?
Yeah, I don't really know exactly why they decided to have back-to-back 5-game weeks. Obviously, it makes things tougher on, not only the team but the people covering the game. But the series against Texas Tech was just one that they were able to get worked out. And, it's going to be great for Arkansas's RPI. Arkansas got hurt by the RPI, I want to say it was 2 or 3 years ago. And literally since then, Dave Van Horn has made it a thing that he focuses on every year of like, hey, we're not going to let RPI be a reason that, we're at a disadvantage in the postseason. So getting not only, the 2 wins over San Jose State, but you get 2 wins over Texas Tech. Arkansas is now 9-0 in midweek games this year. So they're definitely not Florida, which South Carolina fans are now familiar with after last weekend.
Arkansas, speaking of schedules, also has had the benefit of playing a lot of games at home so far this season. And when they're at home, they're phenomenal, 27-1. Away from Fayetteville, though, sitting at 5-4, which is still winning, obviously. But what is the difference between when this team plays at home for when they go on the road or play at some of these neutral sites?
Yeah, Baum-Walker Stadium, I think, is well viewed as one of the better home field advantages in college baseball, and it that shows with them winning 25 straight games at home right now. That's a program record at Baum-Walker Stadium for Arkansas. So, they're a literal machine at home. They have gone on the road and lost a few games. They, dropped a game at Auburn early in the year. They lost the series to Alabama last weekend. So, I don't know. I think they have a lot of young pitchers, and I think that what's happening is they're, just experiencing. They're learning this stuff as they go, right? Like when this team goes on the road for most of this team, not most of it, but a good bit of this team is, they're still learning things and how to work together and how to go on a road trip and figure that stuff out. So, it's kind of weird, but every time we talk with Dave, when they're on the road or about to go on the road, he always talks about how he likes it. Because it's an opportunity for the team to bond. They're just at the hotel or at the ballpark, so they're always together. And so I think road trips are beneficial, but obviously you're going to struggle a little bit more because it's just not your own environment. And so it does make me a little bit worried about this weekend for Arkansas.
Again, talking to Mason Choate from hogbeat.com. You mentioned pitchers there, and we can't talk about the Arkansas Razorbacks without talking about Hagen Smith, who's going to get the go on Friday night, and legitimately one of the best pitchers in the entire country. His numbers speaks for themselves, and going to be a top 10 pick when the MLB draft rolls around later on this summer. What makes this guy so good and so dominant?
Yeah, so literally since he was a freshman, Hagen's always been a mid-90s guy. He's got the heat, but he also has the off-speed type stuff, and he's developed his pitches. And now he's literally unpredictable. And not only, he can come at you with a changeup, and it can be like mid-80s, and then the next pitch he's going to give you 97 on the fastball. It's just his strength. He really worked on it in the off-season. One of his biggest flaws, prior to this season has always been that his pitch count would get high and he wouldn't be able to work deep in games. And so that, they would work him as like a closer, or last year they would call him a wild card because they could do anything they want with him. Now he's an ace. He's working deeper into games. You mentioned his numbers. I mean, they're just incredible, dude. He's got 89 strikeouts to 17 walks, and he's only given up 8 earned runs on the year. And I think 6 of those came off of home runs. So he's literally been almost unhittable. And it's one of those situations where, like, Arkansas had Kevin Kopps a few years ago, and what he did was arguably the greatest season all time from a college baseball pitcher. And now they got Hagen Smith, and it's the same situation. I'm not comparing the two, but it's the same situation where, like, when that guy is pitching, you don't look away. You have to just kind of like push everything to the side and be like, wait, Hagen Smith is pitching. I'm going to watch this.
On the flip side of things, last one for you here. The offense, when you look at their numbers across the SEC, are either kind of in the middle or towards the bottom in most categories. And I look at this past weekend against Alabama, the final 25 innings, they only managed to plate 3 runs over the course of basically the last, roughly almost 2.5 games. What is kind of the disconnect, and what's the struggles that they're having offensively, despite having such a good record?
Yeah, that's the thing with this team is that they have the pitching to do whatever they want and to go as far as they want, but the lineup can go quiet at times, and it did over the weekend. And then they come back in the midweek and they score 9 on Tuesday against Texas Tech. So it's just what I've seen with this team, and when they're successful at the plate, they're really working counts early in the game and getting pitch counts up high early in the game, and they weren't doing that in the last 2 games against Alabama of that series. So, I think, you could look at it and say the pitch counts were not up for Alabama. Arkansas didn't win those games, but then, they early in the game against Texas Tech on Tuesday, same thing. They were having 1-2 pitch at bats, ground out, line out, whatever. And then they started working the pitch count, working counts, drawing walks. I know that seems cliche, but for Arkansas, that truly is what it is. When they're taking pitches, Dave Van Horn has said that he's given this team take sign more than any teams in the last 20 years combined. That's what he said. So they're really trying to do that, and when they do that, they have success. So I would look for that early. If whatever South Carolina pitcher's in the game, if he's having to throw a lot of pitches, I'd be a little bit worried just because that's Arkansas's bread and butter. So just keep an eye on that this weekend for sure.
Should be a fun matchup. Going to have the entire nation tuning in with 2 top 20 ranked teams squaring off this weekend at Founders Park, and we'll see what happens. I appreciate your time this morning, Mason.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And that's Mason Choate from hogbeat.com, and game number 1 coming up tomorrow night out there at Founders Park. First pitch will be at 7 o'clock. Premium coverage will start right here at 6:45 on the game. And, of course, this begins what is going to be a tough road for South Carolina to close out the regular season in SEC play, where you have Arkansas this weekend. You have a very surprising Kentucky team coming up next weekend as well. And then, you get a little reprieve. You take on a struggling Missouri team, and then you get Georgia and Tennessee a little bit later on in the month of May. So it does not slow down by any means, and we'll see how South Carolina stacks up with a top-ranked, or one of the top-ranked teams in the nation in Arkansas coming up this weekend. We'll have more conversation about baseball as the day rolls along. I'll also get back to some conversation about what the football players had to say yesterday speaking to the media. That'll do it for today's edition of the Extra Point. Coming up next, it is the Garnet Trust Hour. Wes Mitchell hopping here with me here on The Game on your Thursday morning. Oh, it is a busy time across the sports calendar. So many things take in. A lot of playoffs getting started. You got hockey playoffs. You got professional basketball playoffs. You've had the play-in games going on over the past couple of days. A lot to take in. You have the draft coming up next weekend in football. And if you're looking for a place to take in all this great sports content, I truly cannot think of a better place than Twin Peaks. We were out there for the beginning of the men's basketball tournament a couple weeks ago, out there at Twin Peaks, and literally TV is as far as the eye can see. You can't turn anywhere without seeing sports on the TV somewhere. In addition to that, you have all the amazing food. You also have the amazing drink selection as well, including, don't forget about those 29 degrees, sometimes lower than 29 degrees, sometimes 28 degree man-size draft beers. All this and much, much more with our friends over at Twin Peaks down in the Vista. 10 o'clock, welcome in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour here on The Game. Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell along with you here on this Thursday morning. Beautiful Thursday, by the way. Mentioned that. Going to be 90 today. I'm so excited about that. I hate cold weather. Going to be a great day. Obviously, going to be a great weekend of sports. For the Gamecocks, just talked to our guy Mason Choate from hogbeat.com at the end of the last hour there, previewing what's going to be a very, very exciting weekend series with South Carolina taking on the Arkansas Razorbacks out there at Founders Park. And I didn't even get to mention this last hour, but South Carolina did make their way back into D1 Baseball's top 20 rankings a little bit earlier on this week, 20th overall, as they've kind of been a little bit back and forth when it comes to those rankings so far this season. But you go out there and you beat Arkansas this week, and that'll solidify you even further in the top 25. Yeah,
I said this earlier this week or last week. It's kind of interesting, the reaction to like South Carolina men's basketball team from the fan base, and sort of all year long it was, hey, we're not ranked, we should be ranked, and just kind of waiting on that. And then this with baseball, the expectations are just so high around here for baseball, and it's been that way really for decades now. You go back to early 2000s, and it's like D1 baseball is still fairly high on this South Carolina baseball team. And, like you said, even if you're kind of going back and forth between that sort of right around 20 or just right outside the top 25, they're saying, hey, we see something here.
Sure.
Like, there's some talent here. It almost feels like they're treading water a little bit in SEC play, but some of that is based on the teams you are playing. And so this is still a top 15 RPI team.
Yep.
And the number, and again, sort of the reverse in basketball, the numbers, the analytics just hated South Carolina, it felt like. Whereas the numbers, a lot of it is scheduled, but there are some big wins baked into that number right now for South Carolina. And so it is kind of funny. There's a little bit of just kind of ho-hum, I feel like, about this baseball season so far, when, as we've said, everything is there to play for if you're the Gamecocks. And another big opportunity at home, against Arkansas. I thought when the A&M series, I don't want to use the word exposed, but I felt like you could kind of see there was like a gap there.
Sure.
I'll be curious to see what does South Carolina look like matching up with this Arkansas team that is also a true sort of top 5 elite type team this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is an Arkansas team that, as good as the record is, 12-3 so far in in SEC play, they're a team that has not played as well away from Baum-Walker Stadium out there in Fayetteville, 5-4 overall. They haven't played a lot of road games so far. They played a 3-game neutral site thing at Globe Life Stadium towards the beginning of the season, and then just played a couple of conference games on the road, but haven't really been tested on the road a whole lot so far this season. So hopefully that can play a big benefit to South Carolina with what's going to be a great raucous environment out there at Founders Park this weekend.
That's the Rangers field?
Yes.
Dude, that's actually a pretty cool opportunity for those guys. I think I knew they did that, but
yeah, it's like
you reminded me.
It was Oklahoma State. There was a couple other teams out there. Just kind of one of those like showcase type things at the start of the season. But that was 3 of the 9 games they played away from home so far this season. And again, 27-1 at home, which is phenomenal. But away from there, a little bit of a different team.
So really, they've only played 6 true road games?
I believe that they went on the road to Auburn, and they went on the road to Alabama this past weekend. They lost 2 out of 3 against Alabama, and this is what I talked about, at the end of the last hour with Mason from hogbeat.com. The final 25 innings of that contest, or those 3 games, they only scored 3 runs. Like, their pitching staff's phenomenal. They have Hagen Smith's going to be a top 10 pick in the draft, but their offense just doesn't quite live up to how good their pitching is, which, again, hopefully something can play the benefit of South Carolina this weekend.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. And I think, once again, reiterates how important it is for South Carolina to have a big, just great crowd this weekend and to be into the games and to affect this Arkansas team. Potentially, we've seen SEC teams, even the really good SEC teams, kind of the ones that I think where you've started to kind of see the cream rise to the top. There have been some struggles on the road, and particularly to your point, a team that has just not had to do it a lot. That's one of those things you probably get more and more comfortable as the year goes on. Now, there are some veterans on this team. It's not like this will be completely new to them, but still, if you're looking for any little edge you could find this weekend, to me, that could be one of them. And I think you kind of look at what's ahead and just if the amount of momentum you could get if you could take 2 or 3 this weekend, and like you said, it's warm weather out. I think I heard it might be possibly rain towards the end of the weekend.
I think Sunday's going to have some rain.
Yeah, but hopefully you got 2 great weather opportunities there Friday and Saturday for fans to get out to the park and enjoy some baseball, and should be a fun matchup. Was there anything, I didn't get to hear the interview, was there anything else that stood out to you that just we all need to know about this Arkansas team other than they have like 35 great pitchers?
Yeah, nothing too, I'd say, shocking from what he said. Again, legitimately one of the best pitching staffs in the entire country. And their numbers on the road are a little bit different, not quite as good, but still, better than a lot of the teams that South Carolina's seen, so far this season. And for Carolina, capped off by winning the series against Florida this past weekend, or being able to go on Florida and win this past weekend, you capped off what was a really great week. Yes, you lost the series against A&M, but you were able to win the Sunday game. You beat a ranked North Carolina team in the midweek. You beat a ranked Florida team in 2 out of 3, or ranked at the time, obviously, down there in Gainesville, doing something you hadn't done in over a decade, winning on the road in Gainesville. Let's go with cut number 18 here, Dave. Here's Coach Kingston last night on Carolina Calls, just talking about the good week this team had and what it means for them going forward.
Well, I'll even take it further back than that. I thought last week was about as good a week as you can have in college baseball, and it started last Sunday. We beat the now #1 team in the country, Texas A&M, beat them on Sunday. Then we traveled to Charlotte to play North Carolina in the AAA ballpark. North Carolina is now a top 10 team and one of the better teams we've seen this year. We beat them on Tuesday night. And then we traveled to Gainesville, and we won on Friday. We won on Saturday, let the one slip away on Sunday. But in terms of the overall week, to beat Texas A&M, North Carolina, Florida twice in the same week was about as good a week as we've had in a while, but I think it's about as good a week as anybody in the country can have. So I was really proud of the guys. They're playing hard. They're playing well. There's still some areas that we want to continue to improve, that if we do, then we're going to be an even better ball club. But I think overall, that was a great week, and it, as you mentioned, it ended in Gainesville, where I thought we played really well, especially offensively. It was one of our better weeks in a while.
And those are obviously wins that are going to bolster South Carolina's resume when you talk about the postseason. Looking at D1 Baseball's latest projections for the Field 64, they have South Carolina once again hosting a regional as the 15 overall seed, which, again, you don't even think about that given the ups and downs this team's had so far this season. As you mentioned, they're 15 in their RPI. Like, they're playing good baseball. They're just playing against really, really good teams.
Yeah, 13 now in the updated RPI, so even better. And, I mean, and you're going to continue to play teams that are littered throughout this RPI. I honestly did not realize North Carolina was 6th in the RPI. So that's a neutral site win over number 6 on your resume. Yeah, Clemson is number 1. Which I know that's not what y'all want to hear or talk about. But point being, you lost 2 one-run games that easily, and both of those were away from home. Now, one was 2 minutes down the road, but still. One was a true road game. The other was a, quote, neutral site. But, I mean, either if you know baseball, a one-run game like those games played out, you're talking one swing here or there, frankly. So I think in terms of what this team is, they're maybe a little bit underrated here locally for just the vibe you get from what people think about when they think of this team. A&M, who, like you said, you did salvage that final game. I thought A&M looked really, really good, frankly, really, really talented, but they're 2 in the RPI. You've got Arkansas coming in this weekend. They're 4. You got Kentucky coming up after that. They're 3. So Georgia's 10.
Yeah.
Georgia's 10? Georgia's 10.
Yeah. Well, and Georgia might have the best player in the entire country, and Charlie Condon that you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, he is a stud.
Tennessee's another good team. Like
Tennessee's 7.
The closest. Where's Missouri on that? That's the closest thing to reprieve you have over the course.
But you got to go out
of the
there.
rest, and you do have to go out there. But that's the one like struggling team you have left on your conference slate.
It's such a just dreary stadium. I feel like it's not a big boy SEC atmosphere.
Yeah,
Missouri's 87.
Okay.
But you got to be pretty bad to be 87 playing the schedule they play.
That being said, they had swept Florida the week before We played Florida, so they are a very capable team. And again, going on the road out there, your longest trip of the entire season, certainly not going to be easy. And again, we're preaching to the choir here. No series in the SEC is easy by any means. But man, you look at the gauntlet that they're going to have to go through these next couple weeks before you even get to the SEC tournament. Not going to be easy. But when you see things like Will Tippett finally stepping up and getting some production at the bottom of the lineup, Eli Jones continue to pitch well. I don't know what the weekend rotation is going to look like, as it seems to change every single weekend, but you have pieces there. You just hope it all comes together for a series win.
Don't you feel like that's got to be the key to them really taking off this final half of SEC play, is just to figure out the pitching roles and just now I know we all know why there's been that rotation, because they've been trying to find the guys who can step up and do what they need consistently.
Right.
Honestly, that's what it is. Like, I'm not saying it's a coaching issue that they haven't set those. They're continuing to tweak, which you have to do, but you would love to come out of some of these final series and be like, oh, this is our rotation. These 2 guys, 3 guys are sort of set up guys. These guys are long relief. And then, of course, I feel like they do kind of have their back end of the game guys sort of settled in Gainey and Veach. Like that. That's really – those guys have kind of stepped up and taken those roles. But I think for them to just figure out – I think guys pitch better too, in theory, when they sort of know, all right, here's what I'm going to be. Here's when I'm going in. Here's how I prepare mentally, physically for that. So I think that would be a big advantage. But like you said, Tippett, if you can keep him going, he doesn't have to hit 400. But, I mean, there's a stretch there where he just really was not able to give you much of any production at the bottom of the order. So you don't start most innings. Like, the only time you are guaranteed to start the game or start an inning with your top of your order up is the beginning of the game. So you're looking at those top of the order guys. There's already an out or two, when you don't get any production from that final spot in your order. The other side of that is if you can get that ninth hitter on base, and he kind of, you hear all the time, that's like a second leadoff. If that guy can set the table for the Messinas and the Petries and Parker Nolan, who's been really good down the stretch, or lately, I should say, that all of a sudden, that can really boost your run totals, I feel like. So Tippett could be your key moving forward as well.
Absolutely. We'll continue the baseball conversation. Jack Veltri from Gamecock Central going to jump in with us in the next segment there. We'll get a little bit of his preview for the Arkansas Razorbacks coming up this weekend. It is the Garden Trust Hour. He's Wes Mitchell. I'm Tyler Head on your Thursday morning on The Game. Well, welcome back into the Garnet Trust Tower. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, along with you here on this Thursday. Talk a little bit more Gamecock baseball. Head out to Love Chevrolet phone lines. Welcome to our buddy Jack Beltry. As always, Jack, of course, appreciate your time. We were talking in the last segment about Arkansas looking ahead to this weekend, and their numbers speak for themselves. Number 2 in the nation right now, 12-3 so far in conference play, but away from home, they are not quite as scary. Still good, but not quite the animal that they are out there at Baum-Walker Stadium in Fayetteville. How beneficial, how big is playing this series at home going to be for South Carolina this weekend?
Well, first off, thank you guys for having me on as always. But, yeah, I mean, this series is massive for South Carolina because, the benefit of it being at home is drastic, right? Because they went to Arkansas last year. I believe they lost that series, and that was kind of when they were in their little bit of a rut where they weren't really winning series or anything. So now that South Carolina is, coming off a big week where they went 4-1 on their road trip, they get, one of the best teams in the country at home. I think it really plays to their strengths. And, again, I think they're going to be energized. I think they're going to be hyped up. They know they have to win this series. I mean, look, it's not do or die right here, but, what this does long-term to win a series like this, it will really go a long way the rest of the year.
Hey, Jack, it's Wes, man. I'm curious, maybe it's a little bit of a long question, but we've been talking about how, during the men's basketball season, everybody was like, rank South Carolina, rank South Carolina, rank South Carolina, and kind of the national media, the voters were a little bit slow to do so, obviously. Baseball has been a little bit of the opposite. This team just now got back into the D1 top 25. They've been right around that level the entire season. They're 13 in the RPI, yet it does kind of seem like the fan base is still just not that happy with the team this year. It's kind of almost like a malaise or just a blindness, I feel like, at this point. Who's more accurate right now, the national folks as far as what this baseball team is, or the local fans who just feel a little iffy? You've watched this team play a ton this year. Who are they?
That's a great question. I think, look, the national media, I feel like, has them in the right spot right now, ranked number 20 in the country. This is a top 25 team, believe it or not. This is a very good baseball team, despite the little bit of struggles they went through, not being able to win series on weekends and stuff. And at the same time, look, the fan base, let's call it for what it is. I do think, I've said it multiple times this year, I just think the expectations are, they should be high. You should want to win College World Series every year. But, some of these expectations these fans have are just very unrealistic. Look, you're going to lose series every now and then. That's baseball. You can't be perfect. You're not going to go 56-0 or whatever it is. You're going to lose some series. You're going to go through some tough stretches. And right now, South Carolina's playing good ball, and they got to continue to do that. But, it's not always going to be perfect baseball. And, I think they're in a good spot right now. I think they're in a good position to potentially host a regional. That'd be great. Being one of the top, 16 national seeds, that'd be great. Obviously, you want to get higher than that. So host a super as well. But I think right now, like I said, they're in a good spot. And, they're playing good ball right now.
You mentioned the potential of hosting a regional. I brought this up earlier. D1 Baseball put out its latest Field of 64 projections earlier on this week. They do have South Carolina hosting as a number 15 overall seed. Is that about where you see them based on what you've seen from this team so far this season? Maybe higher, maybe lower?
Yeah, I think 15 probably seems about reasonable. I actually think that's where they were last year, if I'm not mistaken, because when they went to Gainesville, I believe Florida was a 2 seed. So I know South Carolina was kind of hoping Texas Tech would, beat Florida, and that way, South Carolina could host a super regional as a 15 seed. But, yeah, that's probably about accurate. And I think Coastal Carolina's in that super regional, or regional, I should say.
Yeah, it was Coastal, Boston College, and then Upstate that they had projected.
Yeah, that's kind of a tough regional, I think, in my opinion. Upstate's no easy team either. So, anyway, my point is that, look, I think it's just about right where South Carolina should be right now, but that doesn't mean they can't climb. They've got series against Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee. If they take those series guys, they definitely could climb up into one of those 8 national seeds that end up getting to host the super regional.
Jack, obviously that Texas A&M team that came in here was incredibly talented, really, really good team. I think this Arkansas team is probably right there with them in terms of their just ability and upside. I'm kind of trying to look through and give fans a feel for what to expect from this Arkansas team. Obviously, they're going to pitch. They have the best ERA in the SEC. A&M is second, so that kind of gives you an idea. Kind of similar staffs there, but Arkansas actually a good bit better in the numbers. And then I'm looking at Arkansas offensively. They're not a team that's just going to bash you. They're not going to be a huge home run team, but I'm looking, they do not strike out a ton at all. So they're going to put the ball in play. And I just wonder if South Carolina's defense this week and making sure they play clean defense, which is at times they have, at times they haven't, could be kind of a little built-in key to this weekend.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And I'll try to cover the bases as quick as I can, but let's start with the offense, right? Like you said, Wes, they're not a huge homer threat team. And I say that, and I'm sure that'll probably change this weekend just because I said that. But anyway, they hit for a good average. I mean, they've got a lot of guys like Texas A&M that are going to put the ball in play. I think that actually kind of bodes well for South Carolina because I think for the most part, yeah, they've had some games where they've looked pretty pitiful defensively, but for the most part, I think they're pretty solid out there. I think the infield is really good. The outfield has been – I think that's where a little bit of the weaknesses lie, but I think for the most part, they've covered their ground out there and they've been fine. So that probably does play well. You just got to keep the ball in the ballpark. That's the big thing. And I think with Eli Jones Friday, we don't know who's probably going to start Saturday or Sunday. That's, as usual at this point, kind of is a toss-up. And if it were up to me, I'd probably go Ty Good and Matthew Becker again, just because I do think they're the most capable of going out there and starting. As for Arkansas's pitching, it all starts with Hagen Smith. I feel like he is probably the best pitcher in college baseball right now. I mean, 1.53 ERA, hasn't lost a game this year. 89 strikeouts to 17 walks is nasty, insane, and they've got a good all-around pitching staff. So it's going to be tough. I mean, there's a reason why Arkansas is so good this year. But, again, if it's anything like Texas A&M, I hope South Carolina would learn from that series and just, try to – I mean, look, they have to play better defensively in this series. I think that's also where they kind of lacked a little bit against the Aggies. And they also ran into some bad luck with some, hits that were taken away. So maybe those things change this weekend, and maybe they end up taking 2 out of 3. Who knows?
Yeah, Jack, you were reading my mind. I was going to ask what direction you thought they should take with the pitching staff, with the starters this weekend. But you said Ty Good, Matthew Becker is just your opinion. Can you expound on that a little bit? And how important do you think it is these next few weeks for them to possibly just find a rotation and then the roles after that and just letting them kind of settle into those roles?
Yeah, no, definitely. The reason I kind of say those two after Jones is just because, look, I don't think they pitched really that well at all against Florida. I mean, Ty Good only goes 4 innings, struggles a little bit with the long ball, and then Matthew Becker just gets roughed around in his really short outing. So I think those two definitely have what it takes to go out there and pitch well. I mean, look, they both pitched tremendously against Texas A&M. So I think the benefit of being at home is going to help them. But I think also they just have the most experience to go out there and get the job done. And I would trust them again. I mean, why not? But I think at this point in the year, South Carolina really doesn't have the Saturday and Sunday starters that most other SEC teams have. I mean, outside of Eli Jones, it really is a mixed bag. And I don't think they're going to be able to figure it out all in one weekend. But I think this weekend can be a real good indicator of, okay, who are your dogs going to be? Who are your guys going to be that can go out there and get you outs? And especially out of the bullpen, too. That's going to be big because you have guys like Chris Beach and Garrett Gainey. But who else can go out there and get those outs? I'm interested to see all these missing pieces kind of, maybe puzzle themselves together.
Last one for you here, Jack. Right at 2 minutes. You mentioned Hagen Smith going to get the start on Friday night for Arkansas. Obviously, he's going to end up being a top 10 pick when the draft rolls around a little bit later on this summer. I kind of look at this similarly to what South Carolina faced last year, taking on Paul Skeens when LSU came to town, and South Carolina took advantage of him, gave him one of his worst outings of the entire year a season ago. Obviously, a much different team last year compared to what you have this year. Does South Carolina have the offensive firepower to take advantage of Hagen Smith when he comes in here on Friday night?
I mean, if I'm being straight up, I mean, the problem with South Carolina is they strike out a ton. So that's kind of going to play to Smith's strengths a little bit. I mean, like I said before, 89 strikeouts to 17 walks. He's not giving up a ton of free passes. He's gonna command the strike zone, and South Carolina has to be ready to hit. But at the same time, I do think they have the guys to go out there and score some runs. I mean, look, with Will Tippett specifically hitting as well as he has the last 4 or 5 games, I think that's really going to play well. And I think it helps with the whole lineup in general. Like, I think I love Cole Messina hitting leadoff. I think that really works well. I think the top 3 guys in the order, Petrie, Nolan, those guys, they're all doing well. And then when you have the bottom of the order with guys like Reeves and Tippett and Brewer doing their thing, Talmadge Leakcourt doing their thing, I think 1 through 9, they've got the lines to go out there and win any game, any type of day. It's just, can they overcome their inevitable strikeouts? Because they are probably going to end up striking out maybe 10 times this weekend against Hagen Smith. So that's kind of the X factor for me. Do they get on base? Can they take advantage? Play a little bit of small ball, hit some home runs? We'll see what happens. But, I mean, look, Hagen Smith is one of the best pitchers in the country. And it is very much like Paul Skeens last year. So we'll have to see what happens. But I think South Carolina's got to be ready to attack early. If they get a fastball over the center of the plate, they have to be aggressive and swing. And I think that's really something you saw them do a lot versus Florida this past weekend, and it worked well. So do you do that again, you're probably in a good position to try and win that game.
Should be an exciting one this weekend. We'll check in with you next week, hopefully talking about a series win, and then we'll look ahead to Kentucky. Appreciate it as always, Jack.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your y'all's day.
Yep, Jack Veltri from Gamecock Central. We'll come back. We'll dive into some of this player audio from yesterday as it spoke to the media ahead of Saturday's spring game. It is the Garner Trust Hour here on The Game.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our friends over at Classic Roofing. Head on over to classicroofingsc.com. If you go to that website, you're going to get information about their services, but, of course, you also can set up, as we've been telling you, a free estimate about your roof. Obviously, if you own your home, you want to make sure to take care of that roof. Probably, I would say, one of the most important aspects of your entire home. Our friends at Classic Roofing, that's Joe Reeder, Max Sawyer, 2 friends of mine, they're going to take outstanding care of you. They've got a wealth of experience spanning more than 20 years in the roofing game, and their team of experts is well equipped to handle any and all of your roofing requirements. Now, that could be just your home, of course. Also, if you're a business owner, they can take care of that as well. So really anything from top to bottom, anything in between, they got you covered. The mission is simple: provide you with top-notch roofing solutions. Call them today, 803-590-7870, or go to classicroofingsc.com.
Welcome back in. It is the Garden Trust Hour. Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell along with you here on this Thursday. Again, reminder, coming up tomorrow night, you have Gamecock baseball taking on Arkansas. First pitch at 7 o'clock, pregame coverage starting 6:45, and then a 2:45 pregame for a 3 o'clock first pitch coming up on Saturday as well. And
Tyler, did you bet the over-under on that last segment?
I did
with
not.
your inside information?
I did not bet the over-under on that inside information.
Okay. You don't want to get banned from the studio for life.
I don't want to. I've played DraftKings very minimally years ago during COVID when nothing else was going on. That's the extent of my betting, and that's about as far as I'll probably go.
I could see how that stuff can be highly addicting.
You get a little taste.
You get a little taste, you're like, oh, this is kind of fun. I've got a new reason to watch this game.
Yeah, totally. And that was, I didn't get into fantasy football until a couple years ago. I didn't have any interest in it, but people always told me, no, when you play fantasy football, you're going to start caring about games that you otherwise wouldn't care about. And it's like, okay, well, I don't really have a reason to watch Seattle take on Denver on a random Sunday in the NFL, but if I got players involved, then sure, I'm going to check it out to see what they're going to do for my fantasy team. So once I started playing fantasy, I understood that point. Same thing with betting. Like, okay, I otherwise wouldn't care about the Rockies taking on the Brewers on a Tuesday night, but man, if I think I've got this line and I'm going to get some money off of it, you better believe I'm going to be tuning in or keeping up with it.
Yeah, and I think it goes a step ahead of fantasy just because people have something on the line.
Sure.
There's something at stake.
You can have things online in fantasy based on your league and stuff like that, but it's not the
direct
instant gratification of winning and losing on that night.
And the adrenaline push, the rush you get from that.
It's a drug.
Yeah. So, but man, how many professionals are going to throw away a career that we were talking off air, the Alabama baseball coach. That you're not making millions, but you're having a pretty good life as an SEC baseball coach. And you're going to just throw that entire nobody's hiring you at that point.
No, I mean, you've blackballed yourself from any kind of high-level coaching position at the college or professional level. Maybe you can find your way back into high school or something like that because you obviously know baseball if you're coaching at that point. But, you've screwed yourself from ever having a high-level job like that again. And now you look at Jonte Porter, which is what sparked this conversation and the break there, who's been banned for life from the NBA for gambling on games that he was playing in, would have been playing in, and then he's having these weird excuses of sitting out and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, bench players in the NBA make seven figures as it is. Like, you're in the NBA and you're playing, you're making a good living. And maybe this is something that did start back in college when he didn't have any money and just rolled into when he did have money. But, man, from my perspective, and again, I've never been a serious bettor in my life. Like, I don't understand how you can let this devolve to the point where you're ruining your livelihood with gambling.
And a livelihood that you could have just been set for absolute life. And then if you'd have played your cards right, you could have gambled all you wanted after you got out for the rest. I mean,
totally.
An NBA, NFL, MLB, whatever career does not really last that long in the grand scheme of things. So
no.
you could bet the house after that. It'd be dumb, but you at least could do it without losing your bankroll in this case, essentially. So I don't get it. And I know so. It's become all the advertising, like betting used to be something that ESPN would make like under the radar comments about, like they would allude to it, but now it's we're going to see this happen more and more.
They have ESPN bets now. Like, it is legitimately a part of ESPN now.
It's baked into everything now.
It is.
However, I think the NBA did what they had to do in saying
sure.
There's no gray area. You're done for. They have to have a penalty that will scare people into not doing this.
Well, and here's the thing. Most leagues have similar rules. You can bet as a professional athlete. You just can't bet on games that you are playing in that you can affect the outcome of. And like in the NFL, they just have the hard rule of don't bet in the team facility. When you're in the walls of this team facility practicing, getting your treatment, whatever it is, don't bet here. And guys can't do that. Like the Ridley thing a couple years ago was betting inside the facility. Like that's something that seems so simple, but yet these guys continue to break those rules. And you think that having these high-profile punishments where it's getting publicized and like, man, that guy got banned from the league for doing this. Aren't you going to stop? It's going to happen to somebody else down the line again because it's just a never-ending cycle.
Well, how many guys, frankly, are in a professional league right now and watching this happen and are all of a sudden nervous?
Like, oh, crap. Like, what if they find me
What
out?
if they find me? Like, I got to shut this thing down now. Like, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's there. This won't be, this obviously isn't the first. This certainly will not be the last, but they got to do everything. And kind of like how we talk about NIL, you're never going back to kind of how it was before. You're never going back to where, well, now betting is not going to be talked about. There's too much money involved.
And that's,
that.
It amazes me that it took them that long to come around to it, especially like the NFL. Because the NFL prints money no matter what it does. But they were very like, we don't want to associate with DraftKings or any of these other sports betting sites or anything like that. That's taboo. But now, I mean, God, DraftKings is sponsoring everything from the Super Bowl to your average Sunday game. And it's on every, TV broadcast and all that kind of stuff. Like, they're making money hand over fist because of that, and it's not going to go away. But again, it's becoming more of a prevalent problem, or at least more publicized now, with guys within those leagues having these issues.
Yeah, and obviously those companies, in order to be able to advertise as much as they do, they are making quite a bit of money as well. I mean.
And you can think of it from the standpoint of, well, they're not being educated. And this was 20 years ago, so I don't know how much has changed. I imagine they would put more emphasis on it now. But Preston talks about when he was playing here at South Carolina, before any of this stuff was as, high profile as it is now, every year in the offseason, they had somebody come in, I think it was with law enforcement, that's, clearly outlined, this is what you can do, this is what you can do. Do not bet on these games. Do not get involved in this kind of stuff, to clearly outline what was going to get them in trouble if they did that as student athletes.
And back then it was that, and it was, hey, you can't accept money, you can't accept this, you can't accept that. Obviously, some of those roadblocks are gone, but betting is still hugely taboo in some spots of this, yet it's plastered everywhere. I'm actually a little bit surprised that it still hasn't been legalized to an extent in the state of South Carolina. Now, there's still there are gray area games and companies that it's considered a game.
Sure.
And you can do it here. But anyway, by the way, I'm taking Tyler all over the place with this segment, but I did just get an email from USC, and we know Cam Scott literally signed the paper yesterday, but now he has been officially announced by South Carolina, which means that the letter of intent was sent in, and then South Carolina goes through a process, and they formalize it, and then they officially announce, hey, Cam Scott is a part of our program now. So that email just went out about 5 minutes ago. Don't think there's a quote. It's just basically all of his stats, how he was an absolute stud.
Officially recognized, and he even alluded to it yesterday when he was on here making his announcement that he was not officially official yet. But yes, pen has been put to paper. He is officially a South Carolina Gamecock and will be on the court this upcoming season, which, again, we're all thrilled and excited for.
The career he put together at Lexington High School, 2,475 points, which is, I would say, obviously, it is a school record.
Yep.
And also, I believe he was 5-time All-State, which doesn't really even seem like that should be possible, but he was. He started playing varsity ball when he was in like 8th grade.
Okay, I was like, how did he pull that off? But that makes sense. Yeah, a legendary player at Lexington High School, far more legendary than Bill Gunter.
Four-time All-State.
4-time, okay.
So
right.
Freshman through senior year.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. And obviously, hopefully, that all translates on the court this upcoming season for South Carolina basketball as well. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Garnet Trust Hour. Dawn Staley receiving a gift from pretty high-profile celebrity. We'll dive into that coming up. It is the Garnet Trust Hour. He is Wes Mitchell. I'm Tyler Head here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Garden Trust Tower. Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell along with you for a few more minutes here. We'll jump into the Gamecock Central Takeover hour at the top of the hour. We'll get into plenty of the player audio from yesterday. I also talked to our guy Mike Ufer from Gamecock Central as well. I want to wrap up the hour with this. Cut number 26 here, Dave. Dawn Staley got a pretty cool gift from a pretty big-name celebrity yesterday.
A video thank you. Look at the flowers. I didn't even think they grow these here in South Carolina. Look at the merchandise, okay? If you know, you know. But I'm gonna read this card here, and if you know, you know. To Coach Staley and the entire South Carolina Gamecocks, me and my family watched your games and cheered you on through the entire season. Repeat, me and my family watched your games and cheered you on through the entire season. I'm so proud of you. All my love. Hit it. Hit it. That's B. That's B. B and her family. Yes, Mr. Carter. Yes, Blue, you did your thing, Blue. Sir and Rumi. B, thank you. We appreciate you. We're honored to wear your gear. Okay? It says, always been country. Well, guess what? I've been in the South for 16 years. I'm a little country too. Just because of you, B. Keep inspiring. We love you.
So very cool gift there from Beyonce to Coach Staley after winning the national championship the other weekend. And look, Dawn Staley's accomplished a lot in her career. 3 national championships here at South Carolina, countless SEC regular season and tournament titles, Coach of the Year. Her trophy room is very, very full. I don't think I've ever heard her more excited than getting that gift from Beyonce yesterday.
I feel like there are levels to fame. Obviously, there are levels to fame. And Dawn Staley is up there,
yes,
at this point. I mean, and in the women's basketball world, she is probably tops. Like, she's definitely top 3.
For sure.
In the entire sports world, she's way up there. So you have to have a certain level of fame in order to make Dawn Staley kind of what I would call like almost fangirling over someone.
Right.
So how cool of a moment was that for someone who's been around so many celebrities?
Right.
And I mean, Dawn Staley was in Martin. She transcends sports.
Sure.
And the amount of joy in her voice over that was like when I feel like it's kind of like when a kid meets their hero.
Yeah.
Sort of. So that was very cool. And apparently Beyonce is a South Carolina women's basketball fan.
Well, isn't everybody?
Pretty awesome.
I mean, they're the standard of women's basketball right now. I guess I've never really given thought to what kind of music Dawn Staley listens to, but I could totally see her at a Beyonce concert just losing her mind.
Yeah, that would be cool. But no, that was awesome. I wonder if you know how there's this trend now, people will be like, who's the biggest celebrity you have their phone number
Yeah.
in your phone? I wonder what Dawn Staley's answer would be.
That. You know what? If we can ever get her in studio,
yes,
we're gonna try. If we can ever get her in studio,
that would be a great question for her. You're talking celebs. Coach, if you're listening, I know you listen to 107.5 The Game. If you're listening, shoot us a tweet and let us know.
I mean, celebrities, presidents, there's no telling who she's got in her Rolodex.
Yes.
That spurs the question. Who's the most famous person in your phone?
Oh, man. Maybe Steve Spurrier?
It's pretty good.
I don't think I got... I've never talked to him, but one of the guys... So, obviously, God rest his soul, Mike Leach. I picked up his... I've never talked to him in my life, but I picked up his number at one point along the way when... It was in one of South Carolina's coaching searches.
Okay.
And early on, he was mentioned as someone that there might be some interest in.
Right.
And Chris has it, too, I'm pretty sure. We actually got his his number from somebody, and if it went along, we were just
in case you had it.
Yeah, we were gonna reach out, but Leach, Spurrier.
Here's the funny thing: you could have called him randomly.
Probably would have sat there and talked.
He would have talked to you for an hour.
Yes,
he would have known who you were, but it would have been great.
I regret that I didn't at this point.
Unfortunate missed opportunity there, but yeah, that's Spurrier. That one's hard to beat.
Who's yours?
Got Brad Johnson. There.
Is there a NASCAR person in there?
I got Chase Elliott. Talked to him last year. Saved his number on my phone. He actually won on Sunday, and I was half tempted because he hadn't won in like 2 years, and I was half tempted to just be like, "Hey, congrats, man! Good to see you winning again." But he'd be like, "Who is this? Delete my number." So I didn't do that.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he would have appreciated it.
Maybe. But, I'd say either Brad Johnson or Chase Elliott. That's probably top two for me.
Pretty good.
That'll do it for today's edition of the Garnet Trust Hour. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Our guy, Chris Clark, will jump here with us. I'll start to Mike Eva from Gamecock Central as well here on the game.
All right, guys, coming up next, you got the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, brought to you, as always, by Firehouse Subs. It is almost lunchtime. Order Firehouse Subs today by going to firehouseSubs.com or downloading the app. Hit the Rapid Rescue to go. Avoid the wait. Order online. It is by far the quickest, easiest, most efficient way to order your lunch. You want to try something new? Try this new barbecue Cuban sandwich. It is Southern roots with a Cuban twist. We're going to be back on location soon at one of our local awesome Firehouse Subs. We're going to let you know very, very soon about where we will be next time, and that will be my first chance to try the new barbecue Cuban sub. You got all types of options, though, and also if you're tailgating on Saturday, if you're going to the spring game, you can actually go to firehousesubs.com and hit the catering button on there as well, and you can order catering from firehousesubs.com as well. So whether it's lunch today, catering for Saturday, or any other time, hit up firehousesubs.com then.
11 o'clock, welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you here on this Thursday. Shout out to Dawn Staley. Always appreciate her listening. She did confirm her fangirling.
We got a shout out from Dawn Staley.
We got a shout out from Dawn Staley. So
now
we're fangirling.
Yeah, that was cool. Hope you're doing well, Coach.
Appreciate it, Coach. Coach, please, we'd love to have you in here sometime.
Yeah, definitely.
That'd be phenomenal.
That would be amazing.
So, we'd love to make